Oh, come on.
Oh, come on. So did you get the AARP discount?
Yeah.
He used to own the car wash. So on the river thing, the last before he might not show up because
What did I do? Oh.
he was told he didn't need to use it. For the Tyler Fisher, Charles O'Kelly.
It's a good looking crowd. Good to see you again.
Welcome to the Lincoln City Council meeting. of
Microphone?
July- Pardon me? Welcome to the Lincoln City Council meeting of July 27th, 2020.
Yay.
Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yay.
Yay.
Oh.
In accordance with LB 898, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted at the back of the chamber. The order of the business of the City Council will be as follows. The clerk will call the items listed on the agenda under public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on that item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, then those opposed. The applicant then may make one short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating name, address, and whether he is speaking in favor or opposition to the item. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. And after all public hearing, the council will vote on the resolutions and items listed under third reading. On the second and last meetings of the month, immediately prior to the adjournment, anyone may speak on any issue not on the agenda for that date nor planned for a future agenda. And that would be tonight. So will the clerk please call the first item of business?
Thank you. First item of business, I'm just going to read a announcement just for a reminder. In addition to having our public comment in the council chambers, there is a webinar that will be available for public comment for tonight's meeting held on Monday, July 27, 2020. Those that wish to testify by webinar had to register with the clerk's office today to participate. They had to contact our number at 402-441-7436 and register by noon today. If you have any other concerns you wish to express to the City Council, please email them to councilpacket@lincoln.ne.gov. If you wish to appear in person on an item on the agenda and were not able to register in time, you can come to the City Council building at 555 South 10th Street. Limited seating is available in the council chambers, or you may have to wait in the Bill Luxford studio or in the hallway until your item is called. You can then enter the council chambers and come to the podium. We ask that after you are finished speaking, please exit the chambers on the door to your immediate left. Those of the general public coming forward to testify, please also clearly state your name, spell your name, and give your address and sign in on the sign-in sheet that's actually located outside of the chambers. Testifiers may use the microphone there to your right. Also, there is a spray that we've located right next to the laptop, so if you are comfortable in wanting to spray the disinfectant on the microphone, please do so, and hand sanitizer is available for you at both sides of the podium. We ask those of city staff testifying to please state your name and title and the department that you work for. Also, once you have testified and council does not have any other questions of you, you may you may exit the doors to your immediate left. Our first item on the agenda is sections 1A through 2D.
On our consent agenda, anybody wishing to come forward and address one of the items on our consent agenda? Seeing none. Do we need a motion, Sonia?
I will just need a request to suspend the rules on items 1E and 1F.
I move to suspend the rules on 1E and F.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we suspend the rules on 1E and 1F. Any comments? Please call the roll.
Christensen,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay.
That was to suspend the rules.
Correct. We now can vote on those two items.
Yeah, any comments on bringing these and moving them forward? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Schob,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0 for items 1D and 1E. I will go back and call items 1A, introduced by Washington.
So moved?
Second.
Been moved and seconded by Councilperson Christensen. Any comments, questions? Please call the roll.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Items 1B, introduced by Washington.
So moved?
Second.
Been moved and seconded by Councilman Christensen. Any comments? Please call the roll.
Ward,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 1C, introduced by Washington.
So moved?
Second.
Been moved and seconded by Councilman Christensen. Any comments? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Christensen,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Items 1D, introduced by Washington.
So moved?
Second.
Been moved and seconded by Councilman Christensen. Any questions? Please call the roll.
Schob,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Excuse me. Christensen,
Yes.
Raybold.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
1G or H?
I will also call items 2B and 2D together, introduced by Bowers.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded by Councilman Christensen. Any questions? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Schob,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I'm a little confused. 2B and 2D?
And 2C,
2C, okay.
all three of those.
Thank you. Yes.
Correct?
I guess,
Yes.
Sonny, don't we typically just vote on the consent agenda items all at once rather individually?
correct, but these were resolutions introduced by council members, so I call each of those separately. And then the last three, 2B through 2D, were just setting the hearing date, so I'm calling those together.
Okay.
It's an unusual one. We just have
Okay.
a break-in.
Okay.
So I'm voting yes on 2B B, C, and D, correct?
Correct.
Yes, introduced by Bowers.
Mm-hmm. Seconded by Christensen.
I guess you should start from the top, give me a chance to say yes again, and
Yeah.
We'll
Would you
go
want to
through it.
start over, Sonny?
call the roll.
I'll call the roll.
Choate,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. That ends our consent agenda. Our next item on the agenda is Section 4, Liquor Resolutions. I'll be calling item 4A, application of Lancaster County Agricultural Society, Inc., doing business as Lancaster Event Center for an addition of its entire grounds, excluding the parking lot measuring approximately 127 acres at 4100 North 84th Street.
Okay.
Quick trigger.
Oops. I'm going to swear you in. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
Yes.
Yes,
Thank you.
Could you use that mic, that one over there?
that one over there?
You guys mind sharing? Or?
No.
Nope.
Okay.
Hoyt Kreger, Business Development Manager for Lancaster Event Center. Joining me are,
I'm Greg Rook, Operations Director, Lancaster Event Center.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm Lisa Bunch, Food and Beverage Manager.
Thank you, Lisa.
and so we've presented this application, and our understanding is that we're here to answer any questions with it.
Give us a big
Yes.
can you give me a big overarching view of what your application, what you plan to do, why this is a good thing for Lincoln?
So we've traditionally done special liquor licenses for the county fair and things for events that we're having out at the location that we're looking for this, the area that we've designated. Since we've started putting in that permanent grandstand with that permanent structure, we think it's appropriate to, rather than doing a bunch of special licenses, to have it be a permanent piece. We've got the permanent fencing. We're looking to have more events out there that will drive more tourism dollars to Lincoln and visitors to come into our city. And so we think it's a good move for both us and Lincoln.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'd like to just
Counsel?
clarify, one of the reasons this is important to do is because SDLs are limited in number per year, so to 12. And so this would allow you to use it for as many events as you have at that area, correct?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for them? Nope. Thank you for coming down. Appreciate it. Would anybody else like to come forward to speak on this item? Seeing none, let's move on.
I'll be calling items 4B and 4C together. Application of Kincaid Brewing Company, LLC, doing business Bloom Cider for a Class L liquor license, and the related manager application of Cody L. Schmick at 1630 P Street. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
Your name?
Hey, Cody Schmick, CODY SCHMICK. One of the 4 owners of Kincaid Brewing Company. We recently took over a facility at 16th and P that we put a kind of a college bar on the front half. On the back half, we are going to be producing some products out of that building. Distillery, first and foremost, will be Lincoln's first distillery, which I've already come to you guys on that, but we are adding an element of cider on there as well. We've seen the cider with gluten-free stuff is continuing to grow. And so we thought it'd be a good and kind of easy addition for our business. We have all the equipment already. And so we wanted to add that on to this license. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
I have one question.
Yes. Ms. Washington.
So what will your cider be made of? Will you be using local Nebraska fruit?
Yeah, so there some stuff we'd have to source from outside the state, but we are actually talking. I have a meeting with the guys in Nebraska City to maybe use some of theirs. We probably can't use 100% in Nebraska, but if there's somebody that can come up with it, we would love to use as much as we can. So, yep, thanks.
Any other questions for Cody? No, thank you for coming down.
Thanks.
Is there anybody else in the audience that'd like to come forward on these two, correct, items? Okay, seeing none, let's move on.
Our next item is item 4D, manager application of Tyler C. Fisher for Carlos O'Kelly's Inc., doing business Carlos O'Kelly at 4455 North 27th Street.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we're probably not going to see anybody here, see Mr. Fisher here, because they were told that it was probably going to be on consent agenda and they didn't need to be here. But according to our Officer Hofer, there's no issues or concerns with this application.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Officer Hofner?
No, I read the application, and it was stated there that there were no issues with the application or the applicant themselves, so I'm confident we can vote on this.
Okay, sounds good. Does anybody else here would like to come forward on this item? Item 4D.
Mr. Chair, seeing none, I move approval of items 4A through D.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Councilperson Washington that we approve items 4A through 4D. Is that correct?
Yes.
I do have a motion to amend for item 4A,
Yes, I see that.
and it's I can read it in. It's
Yeah.
I hereby move to amend 20R-239 to substitute the attached resolution.
Just a substitute resolution?
Correct.
Okay, so moved.
It's been
Second.
moved and seconded by Councilperson Ward. And that we substitute the new motion.
Do we know what exactly changes? Is it the area?
He took my question.
Correct. It is a change in the outdoor area measuring approximately 600 feet by 500 feet.
Okay.
In addition, okay, not the 100 and,
Correct. Not what was stated on the agenda.
okay, great.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Any questions, concerns? Let's vote on the motion to amend.
Christensen,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, now we can vote on the main motion.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay. Public hearing resolutions.
Give me 1 second. I just misplaced my agenda. Okay, sorry about that. Section 5 is our public hearing resolutions. Item 5A is accepting and approving the report of new and pending claims against the city for July 1st through July 15th, 2020.
Testimony.
Pardon me?
Just ask for testimony.
Oh, does anybody like to come forward on item 5A? Yes, sir.
My name is Douglas B. Rath, R-A-T-H. I'm here because I live on the corner and have for 36 years at 27th and Van Dorn. I've always tried to cooperate with improvements and things that need to be done in that intersection. It was closed for 2 weeks and I was assured any damages would be taken care of. They ripped out the sprinkler system and threw it up on the sidewalk. And I was told it's a lot of finger pointing between Allo, K2, and everybody else. I don't have time to stand out there 12 hours a day to inspect who's doing what or anything else. I did take pictures and submitted them, and I said, it's not a big claim. I just would like somebody to be responsible, transparent, and accountable, rather than just point fingers saying, I didn't do it. There was no damage done to the sprinkler system prior to that construction. And with the excavation they had to do to get to the sewer, K2 was in there, Allo was in there, I don't know who else. I don't keep track of the city's subs, but it just seems unreasonable to me as a taxpayer that I have to incur the cost of it. I didn't even ask for damage to the turf or grass replanting, just to the actual sprinkler system, which I had to outsource and have somebody come in and redo. So I think somebody needs to be held accountable, and I don't know why it's the homeowner who has to chase the pieces.
Good. Yes, Councilman?
You review for us how much you spent to have it repaired?
I do, I submitted that invoice and got a letter from the city attorney saying it was denied. It's about $388. It's not a lot of money. It's the principle of it, because it isn't the first time we've had things go on there. When it's a pure accident, because there are accidents in that street, and they come through your fence, I assume that's on me because somebody came through the fence and it was a motor vehicle accident. So I've never come forward asking for anything before like this. And it's really the runaround I get from different people within the system saying, point fingers, we didn't do it, we don't know who did it.
Yes.
Hi, thanks for coming out. I just kind of want to make sure that I understand this correctly. So there was a city contractor that was doing some work, and they threw some equipment that damaged your sprinkler system.
They dug it up and threw it up on the sidewalk. That is correct.
Okay, so they dug up the sprinkler system, put it on, threw it on the sidewalk.
Threw it up on the sidewalk, yes.
That's how the damage was done.
I submitted the pictures of it since I've had it repaired.
Okay.
That's why I know the fee is about $388.
Thank you so much.
My question.
Yes, Ms. Washington.
Mr. Roth, thanks for coming down. You said that there was a couple of people in the, so K2 was there and Allo was there. Were they
Yes.
there initially for the sewer or to run Allo?
When they were closed, they closed the intersection for 2 weeks, as I said.
Okay.
I didn't supervise what was going on in that intersection.
Okay. Okay, so they'd closed the
But I
intersection
was
for 2
assured,
weeks.
because I told them of the sprinkler system, that it would be taken care of.
Do you remember who gave you those assurances?
No, but I will in the future.
Fair enough, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions now for
Legal?
Please.
Mr. Rath? No, but we do have questions for our legal. Thank you.
Yep, in the city attorney's office.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rath.
For staff.
Hang around.
I got it.
Okay. May have another question for him.
Okay.
Follows instructions too well.
Johansi Christie, City Attorney. The reason we're recommending denial of this claim is that contracted out, the contractor is responsible for the work, and it's the contractor's responsibility to make sure that the work is done correctly and that they're not negligent. The city, we were not out there at the property. It's very unfortunate what happened, obviously, but we did not have anyone out there, and we would not have provided any representations to the property owner.
Can you describe what the job was? Why did the city hire a contractor to go to that intersection?
Well, while I might not be able to tell you specifically why we would have hired it in this specific circumstance, it's my understanding that I think it's not unusual for the city to hire an independent contractor to do this type of work. I think that it's my understanding is that it is very common for the city to hire out, contract this type of work out.
Yes, Councilperson Rabel.
Mr. Christie, I know when Mr. Rath made his inquiries, is it, I guess, does the city help facilitate when you have discussions with a claimant, like, okay, we're not responsible, we didn't, we may have contracted with these individual companies, but you have to follow up with the companies. And at that time, do you provide like the project manager from Allo or the project manager from K2 or whoever did the work?
Yes, it's my understanding that we would have provided that information, and also when we sent the letter to Mr. Rath, we would have included, CC'd the private contractor K2 Construction, and included that on there, and advised him that that's who he needed to contact.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councilperson
So-
Christensen.
Would it be accurate to describe K2 as the city's agent in this case, since we contracted with them to do the work? They are then therefore an agent of the city as they do this?
Well, I think that they're an independent contractor, and I would like to classify them as an independent contractor.
But
So-
they're doing it on behalf of the city, correct?
Yes.
And that's what I meant. They're acting on our behalf as our agent to do the work. So at some point, don't we have to be responsible for what they do?
Well, again, I would say that they are an independent contractor, and by them being an independent contractor, they are responsible for doing the job correctly. Now-
Could we hold them responsible as a city?
It's possible. In this scenario, though, I think that, again, they are responsible, and that's part of them being an independent contractor, is that they bear the responsibility and not the city to do it correctly.
I have a,
Yes, go ahead.
thank you, Mr.
Councilperson
Chairman.
Washington.
So when, I realized that, taking a personal situation and forecasting this out is sometimes dangerous. But when Allo was coming through and laying a lot of their cable, they damaged a sprinkler system of mine. And they had no problem coming back and saying, hey, sorry, that was our bad, and they paid that. And I know for a fact they paid for a lot of replacement of sprinkler systems along the street because they did tear up people's sprinkler systems, but they were very responsible in saying, we'll take care of that. And they weren't all large bills. Some were very small. Some was just, less than $100. A few heads were broken. So I don't know what the contract looked like between Allo and the city, but I am curious if it's the same sort of contract we might have with K2 for sanitary sewer. And I like that one of our contractors is doing the right thing by the adjacent property owners, but I'm a little concerned that another contractor isn't, if that's a fair assessment.
Well, certainly, I don't know that I can speak to the exact situation that you're referencing with respect to you and what happened with your property, but I can say that again, it's our expectation, understand that independent contractor comes in, does the work, and they are responsible for that. And while I don't know, I think there was some reference about some representations, conversations. Certainly, the city was not out there, and while we don't know for sure who would have gave him the impression that it would be paid for, it's very likely that it would have been independent contractor, probably K2, but again, I don't know that for sure. But it is our understanding that independent contractor goes out to the property in the situation that they would take care of it.
Okay.
Do we have contract coordinators or contract managers, project managers that are supposed to oversee K2's work and Allo's and the sub's work underneath us?
I can get back to you with the exact person who.
We just see somebody in the back that probably has the answer.
I was gonna say, I think that she might know
Long
that.
enough that she overheard and came downstairs.
Good afternoon. I was watching and I thought I might just come down and
Thank you.
help out. But we do have project
You-
managers.
You need to introduce
Oh,
yourself.
Thank you. Elizabeth Elliott, Director, Lincoln Transportation and Utilities. LTU does have project managers on these types of projects. This one was a sewer and gas line movements, and so it was our standard contracts on that. We would have an indemnification clause as well, and so we could go back. I think typically we go right to the contractors, so we don't have to do that. But that is an option because that would be in our contract as well.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that.
Yes. Yes, thankfully it's a standard clause in city contracts, so yes. And our employees are instructed to tell people to file a claim and file that, how the process works. But we typically don't say one way or the other because they don't know. Ultimately, that decision is up to the law department and you guys. And so we try not to make those kinds of promises or inferences that, hey, this will get paid or won't get paid one way or the other. So that's our typical policy.
over here.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Elliott. I think you're uniquely qualified to talk about this issue since you did come from the law department where we live. And mine is a little bit more concerning Mr. Raff's presentation that he tried to find the right person to talk to, but he got a bit of a runaround. How do we express, you touched on it briefly, that we try to tell the claimant what the best way to go, but what are his options here? How does he find the right person to talk to?
And with that, my prior life in the law department, I did work closely with the risk department that if people do have issues like this, that if they go to the city webpage and on the keyword search type claim, the instructions will come up with how to contact. Typically, the easiest and best way to do it is to reach out to the law department, and then they can reach out to the appropriate department. That way, the individuals don't have to chase everybody down. Instead, it's the law department chasing everybody down. Or if it is something like this, they can always reach out to me, and I will make sure that we get the right information, and I'll track down the information rather than making the individual track down that information in the future. Unfortunately, it does get a little confusing out at the scene because a lot of times it's just the contractor. Our project managers aren't necessarily there 24/7 or when the work's being done. And so you might frequently be contacting or having that conversation directly with the contractor. Hopefully they're passing that on to us, but I think sometimes with everything being busy, that may not happen as quickly as we would like.
Thank you. Would you feel comfortable following up on Mr. Christensen's question earlier about the contracts and who's representing who?
And I might have missed it as I was running downstairs, so if you could repeat that.
Was K2 acting as an agent of the city by doing the work?
I think it's probably fair to say that. If they are our contractor in a sense, I would probably leave the legal analysis to the lawyers, but I do think, in my opinion, to an extent, contractors are our agents. They are doing work for us. They would not be there but for us having that contract. And so in that sense, yes, they would be our agents in that sense.
Yeah.
Yes, Ms. Rabel.
Thanks for coming down. So I just want to clarify, has anyone reached out to Mr. Rath with the project manager in LTU to give Mr. Rath the contact with Allo or the contact with K2 so that he could follow up with them for his claim?
Based on the documents that I got this afternoon, it did not appear that LTU provided that information. I don't know if that was provided in a telephone conversation. That I can't speak to. The documents I received, I didn't see that was reported. I will definitely make sure that is done. And again, I just looked at the written documentation. I don't know any discussions that may or may not have happened. And I don't know what the law department may or may not have. I know in the past, a lot of times the contractor is copied on the letters that are sent out to the claimants that say, hey, this is being denied, and then in the copy, it's whatever contractor might have been involved.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Elliott or
Lincoln
law?
Transportation and Utilities.
Okay. Does anybody have any more questions for Mr. Rath? Okay, hearing none.
Wait.
Yes.
It's the same questions for Mr. Rath.
Yes, would you like to come back up?
Were you given the contact information from either K2 or Allo, the likely suspects who may have damaged your?
I do have letters that it was very unclear as to what was happening. I showed pictures of the damage, et cetera. And the reason I'm here is to figure out project management. I really did not get I try to work with that because they park their vehicles, the bobcats and everything, up on property that's not city property. And they parked them right on top of, I've tried to make that a pretty good intersection, planting tulips, et cetera. I lost most of the tulips for next year. With this kind of cooperation, I just have no intent to try to keep that a good-looking intersection. It irritates me as a taxpayer. So I did not find any satisfactory solution to what was going on. Like I said, it was just finger pointing, denial, denial. And with pictures, I don't know how you deny it.
So
I
you're,
would be glad to work future with somebody if they would
Okay.
just give me a transparent solution.
so Mr. Rath, just so I'm clear, so when you reached out to Allo or reached out to K2, they said, hey, our teams didn't do that. Were they clear?
Everybody says they did no digging there. And to close the intersection for 2 weeks and dig 6 feet straight down to whatever they were doing, it's just absurd, the denials you get from people when you call.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Rath? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments on this item? Would anybody else like to come forward, speak on item 5A? Okay. 5B?
Item 5B, Special Permit 18023A, application of Morning Hope Grief Center to allow for the reduction of a portion of the front yard setback from 25 feet to 15 feet for a freestanding sign on property generally located at South Folsom and West B Street.
Dan Rosenthal with the Riga Engineering Group, 601 Old Cheney Road, Lincoln. What we're doing is we're reducing the front yard setback to 15 feet to allow for a sign to go in this area. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions? Okay. Seeing none. Any questions for planning?
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else in the audience would like to come forward to speak on this item? Seeing none, let's move on.
Item 5C, approving Downtown Lincoln Association's 2020-2021 BID budget and program of work for the downtown and West Haymarket Management and Maintenance Business Improvement Districts.
Could you move over to this one?
Oh, over here.
You need to block that off with your rope, Sonia.
Good afternoon, Todd Ogden, President of Downtown Lincoln Association, 206 South 13th Street. And here to propose our 2020-2021 fiscal year budget for Downtown Lincoln Association's maintenance and management budgets. The management budget is based on assessment value for the downtown properties within our district, roughly bounded by H2R and Arena Drive on the west to 17th on the east. And the maintenance is based on front footage. So we are actually proposing a flat budget this year. We have a RFP that went out 2 years ago with a contract for 4 years that included 2% increases. Our board of directors, with the help of liaisons and council members Warren McGinnis, thank you for your support. Working with that to decide it's best to probably stay flat this year and not take the budgeted in 2% increase per the RFP. So we are proposing a flat budget for the 2020-2021 fiscal year.
Yes, Councilperson Ward.
I just want to thank Todd and the DLA board, and as you mentioned, Councilman McGinnis and I are liaisons, so we didn't have, I'll speak for myself, anything to do with the zero-based recommendation nor a vote on it. But thank you, Todd, and to your active board members for supporting that this year. We've all tried to do our part in these uncertain times, so I just want to commend you and the board for that action. So thank you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Any other questions, comments for Mr. Ogden? Again, I can echo Ms. Ward's comments that it's a great association to work with, and they're very responsive to the needs, not just to downtown, but to all the constituents around town. So it's been enjoyable so far.
So far.
So far. Any other comments? Okay, thank you for coming down.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Anybody else like to come forward and talk about the Downtown Lincoln Association budget? Seeing none, we can move on. Thank you.
We can now vote on these items. Item 5A, accepting and approving the report of new and pending claims against the city for July 1st through July 15, 2020, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve 5A. Yes,
Mr. Chair,
Councilperson Christensen.
I would amend item 5A to move Mr. Douglas Rath's claim from denied to approved.
I think I've seen this intersection. I need a second before I go on and talk about it.
Second.
Thank you.
And moved and
Sorry about
seconded.
that. But I've seen this intersection. I've seen the tulips. And I would like to encourage him to continue to plant tulips and beautify our streetscape. But I think the city staff is in much better position to be able to take this on and find out who dug up the sprinkler system and to actually get them to pay for the damages done. But I think in this case, it's a good thing to help Mr. Rath out and approve his claim.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Christian, are you suggesting the city pay and then we try to recoup our money from all the
Yes.
contractors?
Exactly.
Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Rabel.
You know, I guess I'm struggling with that because I sense Mr. Rath's frustration, but I don't know if it's just me, but I don't feel like I heard a clear answer. Yes, I contacted LO or yes, I contacted K2 and that they denied the claim. I think it's an obligation of the city to help facilitate this, to make sure that Mr. Rath has the appropriate contact information, and I think it's certainly up to the city to make sure that, you know, they work with the contractor to make sure that they honor and reimburse Mr. Rath, but I don't believe it is the city's obligation to reimburse Mr. Rath. I believe it is Mr. Rath's obligation to reach out to that individual contractor, and when he does not get satisfaction, then the city should help him with that.
Were you?
No,
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am thinking on the fly here, and it's dangerous, you know, things. But I guess I have a similar concern, not so much that this is not a good claim. I understand that our contractors have done this, and one of the contractors needs to step forward, or they both need to step forward and split the cost. I agree that the city should do everything they can to facilitate, and if I had jumped to the motion before my esteemed colleague, Mr. Christensen, I would have offered that we approve, that we would vote on everything but this one and hold this one aside so that we could encourage the city to resolve this issue. As I said, I know that ALLO pays when they make a mistake. And so I'd like to see this resolved, and it is not a large claim. I just don't want to see Mr. Rath holding this one.
Any other? Yes.
I'd just like to conclude by saying my questions about were they operating as agents of the city? And the answer is yes, they were. Clearly they were. And so the city can then hold those agents responsible and alleviate Mr. Rath from the chore of having to continue to fight this issue. That's my point.
I understand your point.
Anybody else? I have a couple quick comments. One, it's the city that needs to go talk to K2. Mr. Rath really has no standing. I mean, they can tell him no, and it's no consequences to the contractors. So I believe it's the city's job to go talk to them, like you said, and to hold them responsible. Two, I know this corner, I've grown up on that area, that was my hood. And they took a lot of care of it. That corner's been widened and changed so many times. The property owners on these corners are been very good in accepting a lot of this, and I think for future needs up and down, maybe Van Dorn, there's a lot of property that is along there that if it gets damaged, it should be replaced. And the people along there do take care of it. And it's always nice to see people taking care of their property along the right-of-ways. Any other? Yes, Mr. Schob.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have listened to the comments of my colleagues, and I feel very much the same way. I'm a little concerned about the procedure that we're going down. If this were something where the city could pursue the contractors, why we didn't do that in the first place comes to mind.
And
I'm not sure, is this the correct procedure?
And I agree. Maybe this contract's totally closed out. Maybe there's still some retainage that needs to be done on this.
I
I think the city can, and believe me, you know, these contractors are looking to do more city work in the future,
Well,
so.
it was indicated that there was, in the contract, a clause that provides for this kind of remediation.
But Mr. Rath is not part of that clause, so.
That's right.
It
The
has to
city
be
is.
the city that would have to take care of it.
Could we perhaps ask our city attorney, or the
Public
person who used to be an attorney and is
Come on.
now the director of public works?
All three of you come up.
Let's ask one more question, or more.
Okay.
Okay, so if we direct you to make this claim right, we pay and you'd go back to the contractors, are either of those contracts still open?
That I would need to double check on. Either way, though, the statute of limitations has not run. We would have 4 years to go back from when it was completed. So we should have enough time regardless of whether or not it's open.
Okay.
And I would, if that is the direction you go, I would work with the law department and the contractors to do what we could to seek reimbursement.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr.
So
Shep.
Mr. Christensen's motion was to pay the man,
Right.
and then have you go out and try to collect the money. That's not problematic for the city, or?
It devotes additional resources, obviously, because it'll take myself, probably someone from the law department, time to do that. There is always that risk that the contractor disagrees with us, and they could say, we didn't do it, you're gonna have to sue us. And then the law department would have to make that decision of, okay, we want to invest more resources, or, you know what, this one's just a write-off and we're just gonna accept it. So there is always that risk. Usually, in things like this, we're able to work things out, but not always. So there is always that risk.
And we are dealing with more than one potential contractor on this intersection?
It is possible, when you're kind of doing utility work, sometimes there's both the gas line people and city people in there as well. So I would have to double check to see how many contractors were in that area at once. That just by the time I got this afternoon, I just didn't have time to get the details of it.
So the name didn't come, but if it was gas line work, then we're talking about Black Hills.
Right.
And we're talking about Allo, because they were involved.
Yep.
And we're talking about K2.
Right.
For sewer.
That's what it sounds like, yes. So there could be a couple different contractors or responsible parties in that area.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay. One other quick comment is that all he did was move that we go ahead and pay him. And it'll be up to the city or LTU to decide how hard do they want to go after the $383.
Right.
And then they can decide how hard they want to go after that. We didn't say you had to go get it.
Right.
But we're suggesting that maybe you make an effort and then you decide
Absolutely.
if it's enough or not.
No, I definitely think if there was a contractor at fault, that we do hold them accountable and do that. Whether or not if our hands were forced to sue, I don't know if $383 is worth that, but I'll let the law department make that decision at that point.
Okay, one more.
I just got
quick
one
question.
quick
Yeah.
question. If just for my own frame of reference, if it was a city employee, not a contractor, would that ever remove the gray area that the city would have been responsible?
Potentially, yes, that's the lawyer in me giving that answer. If there were other actors, Allo or some, Black Hills contractor or something in there, we might have to look at, was it really us versus them that hit it? But if it was clear that we hit it, yes, we would have taken care of that. The claim process would still have to be followed, meaning they would have to write the claim. Then we would just pay it, and you would see it as a paid claim on your list.
Cool. So if it was a city employee that would have done it, it would have made a stronger case for the person seeking it, but they still would have had to sought to go through the claim process.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other comments? Let's vote on your amendment, correct, or motion?
Thank you, Ms. Elliott.
Thank you.
Motion that we move
Move it from the
Mr. Rath.
denied to the approved.
and pass the others, or just,
Well, no, you have to do the amendment first.
okay.
Okay, so I'm calling the vote from the amendment made by Christensen. Washington,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Raybold,
No.
Schob,
Yes.
Yes.
Bowers, Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried,
That guy.
Okay.
6-1.
Now,
The main
the
motion.
main motion on 5A.
Christensen,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 5B, Special Permit 18023A, application of Morning Hope Grief Center to allow for the reduction of a portion of the front yard setback from 25 feet to 15 feet for a freestanding sign on property generally located at South Folsom and West B Streets, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded by Councilman Christensen. Any comments? Questions?
I just want to say one comment that I think Morning Hope does great work in our community and how they help grieving children, teens, and young adults and families when someone in their life has died. And I think it's really commendable the work that they do on a day-to-day basis.
Ditto.
Any other comments? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Ward,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 5C, approving Downtown Lincoln Association's 2020-2021 BID budget and program of work for the downtown and West Haymarket Management and Maintenance Business Improvement Districts, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded by Councilperson Christensen. Any other questions, comments on the DLA budget? Okay, hearing none, please call the roll.
Raybold,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. That ends our public hearing resolutions portion. Moving to section 6, public hearing ordinances, second reading and related resolutions. Item 6A, comprehensive plan conformance 20010, declaring approximately 26,980 square feet of city-owned parking lots as surplus on property generally located at southwest corner of 14th and N Streets.
Good afternoon, Dan Marvin, Urban Development. Your overhead is out of order.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
No Elmo.
well, I don't have any pictures I can share.
Let's all walk down.
Anyway, good evening. A little bit earlier this week than last week. We have a project we'd like to do at 14th and N. I've been up here before. We did a plan amendment for this particular parcel. This is a surplusing of this area so that we would then be able to go enter into an agreement for a sale and do the project that we've done the plan amendment on. The area is located, for those people that is at 14th and N, it's currently a parking lot, a surface parking lot. It's been a surface parking lot for a number of years. I was told at one time this area had a mortuary, so way back, maybe in the 20s or 30s, it was there was a structure on there. But for as long as I've been associated with Lincoln and worked next door, it's been a parking lot. The other thing that we've investigated are the utility lines in that area. This appeared before Planning Commission on July 8th, and it got a 6-0 vote. It was on consent agenda, and happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Councilman Schob.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Marvin, thank you. I'm excited about, you did some presentation last week and some artist renderings, and it looks like an exciting project. But it doesn't seem like that long ago, we, the city, just bought this property.
Okay.
Could you help me understand how?
So what we did was, the parking that we purchased, we bought a number of parcels
Yeah, we
over
did,
there.
yeah.
So we bought the Eagle Parking Garage, which is on the north side of N Street. And if you drive down N Street now, you'll see that that building is being rehabbed. Our expectation is that that building would be rehabbed and open to the public perhaps by March or April of next year. That's about a 300 stall parking garage. And what we also purchased was the rest of the block that the Sharp building sits on. Basically, all of the other property on that block is owned by the city. It was not the intent of the city to own that 3/4 of that block. It's the intent was at some point to put a new 700 or 800 stall parking garage, either oriented north and south or east and west. This property, if it was to be surplused and sold, would orient the parking garage that we will build in the future to go east and west, which would leave the alley open. And the goal here is to replace the parking that we would have and then be able to build a more robust building, which the building that we showed last week is much more substantial than a surface parking lot. The advantage of it going in its location is we keep the alley open, which means that the utilities that are under that alley don't need to be moved, and we keep the alley. If we were to orient the other direction, north and south, we would be spanning our garage over those utilities, and we have the cost of moving it, and we'd have a smaller parcel that we would sell. At some point in the future, what we would like to do when we build our garage would be something that's more like over on 14th and O Street, where you can see bays on the first floor that are occupied and then a parking garage up above. So we would still try to keep it active on the ground floor, but we would have a parking structure that would go up from there. Did that answer your question?
Mostly. I'm sorry, but I do remember the conversation about the Eagle Garage, and there was a production company in California that we had to work with to get cooperation. Yeah. But I guess my concern is we just spent money. Will we recoup most of our money in the surplus sale?
We will resell the property in the agreement that we would bring forward with Argent. We will bring forward an agreement that will recoup our costs on that lot. So we will have bought 3/4 of it. We'll sell off that 1/4 and recover our costs.
I guess in my brain, the idea of surplus meant.
But the idea was didn't want to give people the impression that we bought 3/4 of it to build parking only in that area.
I'm happy. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other questions? I have a couple. You said the alley will stay open, so there will be no air rights above the alley that anybody's going to be looking for at this point?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
The connection now between the Sharp building and the existing parking?
We will keep the pedestrian walkway that connects into the Sharp building from the current garage, and then when we rebuild, the agreement that was struck by a previous council and the one that we will honor would still create that pedestrian walkway into the Sharp building as
This
well.
group will have no need to connect to the new parking garage across the alley?
No, the Argent building will build parking within its own building.
Okay, and there are no other easements, access points?
We're doing an ALTA survey as we speak, and we'll see what that reveals, but the preliminary.
You already have an idea of what you're going to
Yes.
sell it for?
Yes, would probably be in the $40 to $45 square foot neighborhood.
Do we have to have an appraisal?
Do we have to have an appraisal? When we sell property, I would probably defer to Michelle on that. Generally, when they're aged and they're old, we would refresh with an appraisal. Given the fact that this is a fairly recent purchase, I'm not sure. I would defer to Michelle when we get to the point on that.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Anybody else would like to come forward on this
Mr.
item?
Marvin. Thank you.
Nobody else at this point? Okay, let's move on.
Item 6B, Text Amendment 20004, Application of Superior Lighting to amend Chapter 27 of the Lincoln Municipal Code, Sections 27.69.020 and Section 27.69.240, by allowing up to 2 menu board signs for each drive-through lane used by an eating establishment taking orders from vehicles and adding a definition for menu board sign.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Kevin Ross. I'm with Superior Lighting. Last name is Ross. And just want to say the planning department did a great job on the summary report, showed pictures of examples, and I'm just here if anybody has any questions.
Does anybody have any questions on this at this point? Nope. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like a question for David. Mr. Carey?
David Carey, Director of the Planning Department.
I know you've spent a lot of time kind of on this, or been looking at this for some time. What, you just needed somebody to come forward with an application on this to kind of come forward to change the ordinance, or?
Well, technically, we wouldn't have to have someone come forward. We certainly
Okay.
can come up with an amendment on our own. At times, we do that. In this case, it became, we'd have received some questions over the years about the ability to have more than just 2 menu board signs, basically effectively allowing only one drive-through, or if you had 2, you'd have to have 1 sign in each one. In this case, we had, an applicant that had identified the desire. This is the McDonald's down at 27th of Pine Lake that is the project that's driving this. They want to add that second drive-through. They can fit it on their site. And so basically, it was a good opportunity to have a text amendment to apply for the whole city, so that it was consistent and allows for that flexibility that is what this provides for those types of situations.
Okay. I see you had a consultant involved, Mr. Norris.
An unpaid consultant, a
I
volunteer,
know.
yeah.
He told me that.
Bob Norris, he's got over 30 years of experience in the industry, and really obviously has great interest in this and helped us out with making sure that we knew what the industry standard was, and it helped us kind of confirm that what we're proposing makes sense.
Yeah. Mr. Norris has been in the sign business with Nebraska Neon for many, many years, and he's been involved with city ordinances for many years. Yes. On signs, so. Any other comments, questions?
I have a comment. I think I'm most pleased with the caveat that if the sign can be seen off property, that there are provisions there for sizing it down or screening it, and I really appreciate that. I understand why a business would want 2 signs per drive-through lane. I also really appreciate that their care is being taken to make sure that Lincoln stays beautiful.
I would agree.
Thank you. Anybody have any other questions for Director Carey? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Would anybody else in the audience like to come forward to speak on this item? Seeing none, let's move on.
That ends our public hearing portion of the agenda. We'll move on to section 7, ordinances 3rd reading and related resolutions. Item 7A, change of zone 20016, application of Lincoln Federal Bancorp, Inc. for a change from AG Agriculture District to R3 Residential District, and from AG Agriculture District to P Public District on property generally located at South 27th Street to South 40th Street and Rokeby Road to Yankee Hill Road, introduced by Raybold.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded by Councilperson Christensen. Any questions, comments? Thoughts on this? Seeing none. Yes. Jane, do you have something?
Well, I just have a question. I'm not sure if it's of David Carey. I know that Mr. Prenda had requested an additional 30-day delay. And his appeal, I believe, is of the same item. Is that correct? So I guess the question is to Mr. Carey. Have you heard that Mr. Prenda would like a 30-day delay?
David Carey, Director of the Planning Department. I have not heard about the 30-day delay.
Okay, so he sent an email that came to the city clerk and to the city council packet on Thursday, July 23rd. He said he finally heard from Lincoln Federal on Monday at 11:30 a.m. and a dialogue was started. The bottom line is that more time may resolve our differences to assure the proposal is going to have the the least negative impact on existing property values and tax base. So if, his appeal is the next item
Correct.
on the same topic.
Same area, yes. Same development area, yes.
Okay. I guess, I don't know if it's appropriate at this time to make a motion.
This is the time.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Then I make a motion for a 30-day delay.
On both of these?
Probably on both of those, as per his request. So 30 days would put it at, is it September?
It's been moved and,
Second.
okay, seconded by Councilman Kirshenson, that we do a 30-day delay on item 7,
A and 7B.
7A and 7B. Any comments or questions? Yes, Mr. Show.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate what Councilwoman Raybold's doing here. We kind of had a 2-week delay already on this. And so is
If I could jump, I think,
Mr. Carey, would you help me understand better what's going on here?
I didn't want to interrupt.
No, go
I
right ahead.
appreciate that.
My understanding is that the delay that was requested got it so that you had the hearing last week. And so my understanding is that you should be able to act on these today. That we haven't received a formal request to delay any further. That the delay was already accepted to make sure that Mr. Prenda had the opportunity to speak at the hearing that was held last week. So that,
I'm looking at something that's dated July 23rd, Thursday, July 23rd. Our last meeting was July 20th.
20th.
And so this went to the city clerk and Jerry Burbaugh?
okay,
Is that Jerry's in your department, right?
correct.
Okay. So that came to you all, and then it went out to all of us on Thursday, July 23rd.
And I would say that I think that you have, absolutely, you can make a decision to delay further. I'm just saying that the process that got us to this point would allow you to take action on these. If you decide to delay further, I think that it's completely up to you to do that. I'm not aware of the details of what I think is gonna end up being a private agreement to work some things out, but I can't speak to that right now.
Well, I guess the question to my colleagues, did everybody get this? Or it's
I'm
dated
looking
July
for it.
23rd. It was, Angie had sent it out to all of us, and it looked like the clerk had forwarded it to Angie, and then Angie forwarded it to all of us.
It sounds familiar, but I am looking for it, and I've been
Looking for it
searching
now.
under Prenda, but I'll search under
Angie.
Angela
Burkett sent it to us, and the city clerk forwarded it to Angie.
I don't recall seeing the email. However, we do have several different emails that are accessible to the city clerk's office.
Subject line is
So I could
SB
fairly
100.
have missed that email myself as well.
Okay, just a second.
Okay, but it also went to Jerry in the planning department.
So I might suggest that maybe a
1 week.
1 week delay, just to make sure we get clarity on that, in order for,
Yeah, that's okay. I'm certainly fine with that. I'm not making stuff up either.
Here
So,
you go. I found it. It was, yeah.
But, okay.
Subject line is
The
SB
motion in front of
260.
us is for a 30-day
30
delay.
days.
And that's at the request of the applicant.
That's at the request of the
the appellant.
for the appeal.
Oh, appeal it. Thank you, appellant.
Appellate.
So the motion is 30 days. That's what we're.
That would take it to the 24th of August.
Right.
So if I wanted to change it to a week, would I try to make a motion to amend that at this moment?
You could, yes.
Or would we just go through the process and vote? and
No,
then see
we're
what
still on in the amended motion for 30 days.
For 30 days.
Then if it fails, you can order and do another one.
I'm open to a friendly amendment for a week delay so that the planning department can get this clarified.
Want to change it
And-
then?
What's that?
Just want to change it to a week?
Yeah, a week would be fine
You
until.
agree, you
Do
were the
that, so you
second,
lawyer-
you were the
yeah.
second on that,
Yep.
Mr. Christensen.
And if the planning department could reach out to Mr. Prenda and the applicant for the change of zone, Lincoln Federal Bancorp, and clarify that they're having ongoing discussions so that we can either take action next Monday or we can honor the request for further delay. But, we
Okay.
often get these delays, but we get it based on, and we want to let constituents know, we read your emails. We do read the emails. And so it looked like it was Mr. Prentice sent it to the city clerk sent it to our secretary, and it went out to all of us. And so we try to be respectful of this, and that's why we have planning up here to give us more details on things that we have
Mr.
questions
Schob.
on. So,
Councilman Show, do you have a question?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate again my councilwoman friend, Councilwoman Raybold. I'm a little, so if we did, can anyone just send an email to the city clerk and say, I want a delay for something? And then there's got to be a process in
if you read
requesting a
the,
delay.
I mean, if you read the body of the email that he said to the clerk that forwarded it to our office, it's as if they have engaged in negotiations and discussions. And typically, we see that happen often, a lot of issues that get presented before us, and we always like to give them more time to work out their own private differences without engaging us in their own differences. So
I appreciate what you're saying, and I agree, we do often see that, but it's awfully late in the game's what I'm worried about, and the procedure of getting there. If we give a week delay and we get another email from someone else out in the public that says, hey, you know what, I'm getting ready to have a conversation with the developer too, can you delay another week?
Well, I was very hopeful that the planning department would provide some further details on, yes, they're in discussions, or no, they're not.
Okay.
I would say this isn't just somebody out in the public, this is the man that appealed to bring it to us to begin with.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't even be talking about it.
That's correct.
He made the appeal.
I think 1 week is fair.
I do too. Oh, sorry.
No.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, the motion on the floor is for a 1 week delay. I'm probably not as in favor of doing this and delaying this and delaying this. Again, he's had a couple delays already that the applicant agreed to. I don't believe the applicant even knows about this latest delay. Our planning department didn't know about him asking for the latest delay. Is he going to come back again next week and ask for another delay? I don't know.
I think we absolutely need clarification, because in the body of his message there, he indicates that Lincoln Federal Bancorp has reached out to him.
At that point, would he withdraw his appeal?
I mean,
Well, you've already had a hearing on it, yet.
yeah.
I don't know that we
Have to
can
vote
do
either
that.
way.
I would like,
I'm
I
sorry.
would, my goal
Jane,
is to have
let's do
planning
this in
department
order.
sort this
Let's
out.
do this as we're called upon.
Yeah.
Let's do this in order instead of having a quick discussion.
I like
So
your
now,
last
Jane,
statement.
please.
I am hoping that planning department will take this week and speak to both parties and make sure there is a legitimate, reasonable request for a delay.
Okay. Would someone else like to speak? Okay. Let's please call the roll on a 1 week delay.
For clarification, are we doing a 1 week delay on both items 7A and 7B
Yes.
Yes.
With no public hearing.
for action only?
Yes.
Okay. And that was seconded by Christensen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Christensen,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
McGinnis.
No.
Motion carried 6-1.
Okay. Move on.
Item 7C, change of zone 20019, application of Ron DeBoer and Carol Domina for a change from AG Agriculture District to AGR Agricultural Residential District on property generally located at South 110th Street and Satilla Road, introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Second.
And moved and seconded by Councilman Christensen. Any other comments or questions on this? Seeing none, please call a roll.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Washington,
No.
Ward,
Yes.
Yes.
Bowers, Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 6-1. Item 7D, amending Chapter 9.20 of the Lincoln Municipal Code relating to offenses against public peace by repealing Section 9.20.100, minimum penalties in its entirety to remove any inconsistencies with state statute, introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded by Councilman Christensen. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, please call a roll.
Schob,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. That ends our section 7 of the agenda. Section 8 is resolution for action only, item 8A, which I do have a motion to delay for 2 weeks until Monday, August 10th, 2020.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll move for the delay.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded by Councilperson Raybold.
Is this action only? Yes, still?
Action only. And I guess I've been exchanging emails with Ben Higgins, Director of Watershed Management, and it seems that Watershed Management is working with the applicant on fine-tuning some of the water movement issues that that community is experiencing, and they had requested additional time to work with the engineer on developing more detailed plans.
Yeah, I understand and can support a delay while people are working out differences and hopefully coming to some agreement.
Okay. We need to make any other comments or questions on the delay motion? Please call the roll.
Raybold,
Yes.
Yes.
Bowers, Washington,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Our next section on the agenda is resolutions first reading. It's items 9A through 9S.
Wow, that's a lot.
That's a lot of work next week.
Section 10, ordinances first reading and related resolutions, items 10A through 10K.
We're in that alphabet.
Section 11, pending list date certain, item 11A. Section 12 is our pending list items 12A through 12C.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, it's time to move into the open mic session that we will have tonight. We will call those can come forward that are in the chamber first, and then we will go to the ones that will be on electronically. So those first coming forward, as you remember that it's a 5-minute time limit. You're willing to speak on any item that's not on our agenda or on future agendas. And you can come up and tell us what you're thinking tonight. And the first person would like to come forward, we're going to use the right microphone only at this point. And if the next person would like to line up in the back of the room and be able to come forward.
Mr. Chair, I think she has a sign-in sheet and is going to call people.
Okay, was that the way you want to do it tonight, Sonny?
Yep.
Okay, we'll call your name, and then you can come forward and she'll tell you who's up next.
First up, we have Lydia Arnold. On deck would be Jaden Kinsey. And for those of you that are testifying, if you missed the announcement earlier, we do have hand sanitizer at both podiums and also the microphone spray right there by the laptop.
This is the spray on there?
Yeah.
Don't want to mess up this. Lydia Arnold, Lydia Arnold. My address is clearly written on that sheet. For 37 years, I would have had no problem also stating it verbally here, but I now feel that's an unwise thing to do, not necessarily because of anybody in this room, but because of its subsequent accessibility to others. How can it be that that is a concern of mine? I am seriously concerned about Lincoln at this time. My thought is that, similar to a skillful, exceedingly well-prepared surgeon, your job is to fix what needs fixing here in Lincoln without harming or destroying Lincoln in the process. I think the lessons of history, recent and ancient, are invaluable in providing wise guidance. What does history teach about appeasement? Did appeasement work before World War II? Webster says appeasement is to pacify or buy off aggressors by concessions at the sacrifice of principle. does appeasement create robust, healthy relationships? If you have a child who is unruly, who refuses to obey the rules if he doesn't agree with them, if he bullies his siblings, does all he can to make the family dance around him, do you say, well, okay, we'll change the rules? What should the rules be? I think the Trojan horse is also an exceedingly important lesson. I think things are often not what they put themselves out to be. Does these short excerpts from President Lincoln's second inaugural address apply today here in Lincoln? On the occasion corresponding to this 4 years ago, all thoughts were anxiously directed to an impending civil war. While the inaugural address was being delivered from this place, devoted altogether to saving the Union, insurgent agents were in the seeking to destroy it. One party would make war rather than let the nation survive. The other would accept war rather than let it perish. I thank each of you for your dedicated execution of your responsibilities as a city council person. I wondered exactly what the oath of office was for city council and for the mayor. I came across that the United States Constitution mandates that all federal civil servants take an oath of office to faithfully execute their duty to support and defend the nation against all enemies. This is what I found as the oath of office for all state and political subdivisions in Nebraska, so I'm hoping that this is what it is. I, so-and-so, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or for purpose of evasion, and that I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of the office of, according to law, and to the best of my ability. And I do further swear that I do not advocate, nor am I a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or of this state by force or violence, and that during such time as I am in this position, I will not advocate nor become a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government or of this state by force or violence. BLM website has many references to revolution, changes coming, global revolution. Doesn't a revolution mean the overthrow of existing governments? I thank you again. I hope when you did take the oath that you did, as it said, you did it freely without any mental reservations. I thank you for continuing to faithfully and impartially perform the duties of your office. Thank you much.
Thank you.
And I know I'm supposed to leave, but I left something at my chair.
Okay.
So I'll go get it and leave.
Thank you.
Next up is Jaden Kinsey. On deck, please step to the back of the chambers is Jack Nebelsick.
Jaden Kinsey.
Thank you.
You may already know what I'm going to state, but the public needs to know the following facts. And I added an addendum because last week it went on so long that I left before I got to make my presentation. Basically, I'll go through my addendum first. Black Lives Matters is not one organization, it's many. And I did this research on the internet. Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation was founded by the mothers of 3 black men who were shot by the police: Patricia Cullors Alicia Garza, and Opal Tometi. Other organizations in the movement have words in their name also. But the one I'm addressing here is not a tax-deductible organization, but receives money from organizations who are Color of Change, Borealis Philosophy, Act Blue, Rob McKay of the Taco Bell Foundation, Thousand Currents, and George Soros Foundation Open Society Foundation. Kaylee Seals is director, and it has assets of about $12 million. So with this amount of money, it's free to make many choices about how it presents its goals. At present, it is choosing to be a militant organization. Indeed, on 7/18/20, a news clip on television showed a woman in Portland, Oregon, who stepped to the microphone and said, "I am with BLM and we are here to destroy the U.S. as we know it." This is hardly the way to have a dialogue about racism or police enforcement. And it's scary to see signs in the council chambers that read, "White supremacy and fascism gets you," and to hear words from Angela Davis quoted, who is an avowed Marxist. One of the ideas is to defund police departments and have social workers go to meet with mentally ill people who are dangerous and out of control. This is a naive belief, and it was on Trevor Noah's interview with Priscilla Cullors of the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation. Social workers do not have verbal power to de-escalate people who are out of control. Indeed, they have been killed in this situation in the past because they do not have the training to do so. No thoughtful supervisor is going to send a social worker alone without police protection to face someone who is irrational. And I doubt that any of you would want to face somebody irrational without police help. And I'm sure Mr. Bowers would agree. No, society needs police to maintain order and protect citizens from people who are out of control. I know of no society that does not have police to enforce the law. The question is how that enforcement is to be carried out. I, for one, do not want to see my society destroyed. If the call is for that, it is a call for anarchy, which is what is going on in Portland for 50 days. And the mayor was attacked and spit upon and told to resign after he had shown some compassion for their stance. I am disturbed that the mayor and some of you have seemed to side with this organization here in Lincoln. They are dangerous, and it is dangerous to not realize what they are about.
Time.
Thank you.
Next up, Jack Doublesec. On deck, Mary Hilton.
All these things I'll deal without. City Council, ladies, gentlemen, when we were here 3 weeks ago, we were urging you to do something. So it's a pleasure to stand here today and thank you for doing that. So it's my pleasure to read what I have to say here this afternoon in that regard. I represent a large number of individuals I'm representative of a large number of individuals who are a little farther along in life and find it physically difficult to come stand before you and visit with you. However, let me assure you that they and I am very grateful for your decision to add the 5 additional men to the Lincoln Police Department through the federal grant. I know this because they've told me that. So we are a big group, really. We are particularly grateful for your concern for our physical safety in our communities that the police provide. And we trust that you will continue to do your utmost to encourage and support our excellent police department headed by Chief Bleimeister. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Up next, Mary Hilton. On deck is Serena Freet. Okay, Serena Freet. On deck is Maya Kassim.
Hello, my name is Serena Freet, Sarena Freet. If you think what's happening in Portland and Omaha are unrelated to what has happened this summer in Lincoln, you are mistaken. The escalation, violence, chemical weapons, harassment, and mass arrests we've seen has offered insight to the daily functions and harms by the hands of the police. Where the city budget currently sits, along with the council's financial acrobatics to drum up funding for libraries, parks, and sidewalks, could all be easily resolved by reallocating money from LPD and investing it in our communities. No to LPD's 3.25% increase to their salaries. No to the new officers and a match and COPS grant. No more money to LPD. Thank you also for continuing to prioritize and allowing virtual comments. It's great for accessibility. That's all.
Thank you, Serena. Next.
Next, Maya Kassim. On deck is Emma Linus.
Hi, my name is Maya. Thank you for having this open commentary. And what I wanted to say today was that what we've been seeing in terms of escalation from violence from police forces around the country is all indicative of a systemic problem with white supremacy that we wrestle with in our society, and which is coming to a breaking point because of the lack of infrastructure in handling several recent crises nationwide, including COVID-19. But so the reason that I'm here is because there are young people in their teens and 20s, Black, Indigenous people of color, undocumented youth that are fighting for safety for themselves and for their community. They just want to live. They just want to proceed with their lives and experience joy, but instead they're faced with disproportionate rates of arrest for crimes that white people may perpetrate in excess, but that are still that people of color are disproportionately criminalized for. So we owe it to the youth in our communities to defund the police force and to allocate that funding to the resources that keep our communities truly safe. Those are libraries, those are parks, those are sidewalks that people can move their feet and their wheelchairs over. There is so much that goes into the safety of a community that is not a militarized arm of the state. There is so much that we could do with people and for people, and the budgetary increase of the LPD does not reflect their success in the community. you can't unchase people through their neighborhoods with tear gas. That moment has come and gone. We are looking at LPD in a completely new way now, and it is time to defund and give the funding, return the funding to the public, to the true public safety institutions, the libraries, the parks, the education system. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Up next is Emma Linus. On deck, Katie Anania.
Hi, my name's Emma Linus, EMMA, last name LYNESS, and I'm here in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. I'm here to reiterate demands to make sure that they've been taken seriously. You know, I'm not speaking for those community members, but I'm here to uplift those voices. And protesters, I'm sure you're aware, have been consistently calling to defund police departments around the country because of, frankly, disgusting misuse of power that we see time and time again. And the fact that our budget is proposing to do the exact opposite of what millions of protesters are calling for is, in my opinion, a bit disgraceful. And I'm here to shed light on the events, not only at Portland, but Omaha, you know, a mere hour, 45-minute drive away from here. On Friday, there was 100+ peaceful protesters that were arrested, detained, zip-tied, and held there for hours on end, and then subjected to terrible conditions. Bail was not able to be posted, and we were calling them, asking for justice, and they were saying that the systems were down. Anyway, the OPD defied state policy with those mass arrests, and I think that's all I've got to say. I've been following, and I thought that I should come up and speak my 2 cents, so I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you for coming down, Emma.
Next, Katie Anania. Did I pronounce that correctly?
It's Anania.
Anania. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for offering public commentary. I come to you today to express concerns about 2 specific things, that one of which is a grant to fund 6 additional police officers and to add them to the Lincoln Police Force with the already customary yearly addition of 4 other officers to be added to the force. The other is Ordinance 10A, which proposes a 3.25% pay raise to police officers in Lincoln. I think both of those, particularly the acceptance of the grant, which promises matching money from the city to increase police presence, is a misuse of public funds, and I think a misdirection of, it's a misdirection of money that we have far too little of, and should be going to the community measures that are desperately needed as we move further into the effects of the pandemic. I'd like to ask for the budget for the fiscal year in general, but these 2 measures specifically. Instead, make adjustments in spending to shift funding from police work to other forms of community support. That is the longhand version of what we have been nicknaming defunding the police. I'd like to cite a few pretty concrete events and facts that I've witnessed. I cite the fact that the LPD has beaten, shot, and tear-gassed protesters just a few short weeks ago. Not to mention the blanket arrest of, I think it was about 75 protesters in Omaha last night who were engaged in a peaceful demonstration. I think my fears are not imaginary, nor are they founded on empty speculations of what might happen, of which organizations are or are not funded by George Soros, for instance. Instead, I really take umbrage with the very real mishandlings of peaceful protests that have come up in the last 3 weeks in Omaha and Lincoln. This series of arrests without cause, in addition to recent police violence in our own city, is, oh, sorry, I lost my place. Recent police violence in our own city, that's the empirical evidence that I cite for you today, and that convinced me that the answer to the concerns plaguing our cities is not to be found in increased policing. Indeed, the work and central project of police work is counter to the calm, measured conversations and community care required in a crisis of this magnitude. There is not a single business or public entity that will not see austerity measures enacted because of the current pandemic-related recession. And yet the proposed Ordinance 10A asks for a salary increase from city funds for all police officers in the amount above 3%. Why are the police to be exempt from the careful budgeting to which the rest of us are subjected, particularly as the needs of our citizens expand in the pandemic to basic things like food, shelter, and so on? The pandemic and its economic effects will shape our city for years to come. It is our moral obligation to shift funding from adding police to adding the kinds of infrastructure that will truly benefit citizens and prevent crime from happening in the first place. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. I want to also caution everybody that we are not to be talking about items that are on our agenda or on a future agenda. For the items that we were talking about before, which are the budget items, there will be a time next week when you can come forward and speak on those. But, yeah. Thank you.
Next up, Chelsea Eigenberger. On deck, Carry-On Wilson.
Hello. My name is Chelsea Eigenberger. It's CHELSEA-EGENBERGER. I'm a resident of this community, and I am here to ask that you defund the Lincoln Police Department. You've heard a few different ways how, and I agree that not increasing the salary and meeting the match for the grant to hire more officers, those are not ways forward. Our community is hurting, and you are leaders in our community, and so it is up to you to show us what is the true priorities of the Lincoln City Council. And what you decide to fund is truly going to show us what those priorities are. Now, white supremacy is rampant in our systems and in individuals, and to work to dismantle white supremacy, we must look to do the work, the hard work, and I believe that must be an individual work to be done. So each one of you to do that work to dismantle white supremacy, and then look at the systems that we are continuing to, that continue to hold racial bias. And we see that what it does to our communities. We saw that the police turned against our community and saw them as a threat. And so I ask, how can we do better? There's a great quote by Paul Wellstone that I know Benny enjoys as well. We all do better when we all do better. And I can't see us doing better if we continue to fund the criminal injustice system. That is not showing us that we are doing better. And so I guess I have to ask, Do you see our community as an asset worth investing in, or a threat that you must leverage power and threats against? And so with that, I ask that instead of funding LPD, you fund housing. We know housing is a major crisis in our community. So why don't we prioritize that? Why don't we look at access to health care and access to mental health care? So many in our community are struggling with that. And instead, we are looking at continuing to fund things that perpetuate anxiety and harm in our community instead of investing in healing and care. And so, again, I ask, do you see our community as an asset worth investing in or a threat? So with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you. Chelsea?
Okay. Thank you all. We all do better when we all do better.
Next up, Karen Wilson. On deck, Emily Nguyen.
Hey, everybody. So I wasn't going to speak, and then someone came up and said that Black Lives Matter is like a multi-pronged organization that is working to destroy America. I haven't heard my friends talk about destroying America. Maybe they're like plotting behind my back. But for the most part, the movement here, I just want to clarify, has been nonviolent. We have no interest in destroying America. I feel weird saying this. But I do want to talk about another organization that is not centered in one entity, that has perpetuated violence that we do have evidence of, and that is the police department, right? We've seen evidence, we have video footage of the offensives that they've perpetrated against protesters. And so when we start to talk about this mentality of like, okay, well, this organization is speaking on Black Lives Matter, this organization is bad. They're receiving money from these people, and that's bad. You know, we should be able to take that same logic then and apply it to the police department. Where is their money coming from? What are their interests? You know, what laws are they being held accountable for, and what laws aren't they? If we were to look at problems like this, instead of just looking at each other like enemies and convincing ourselves that the people that oppose us want to destroy America, then maybe we would actually be making progress, instead of me having to come in here every Monday and talk to you guys basically about the same problem. So moving forward from that, I just want to talk about, like, I want to simplify these issues, okay? So the next thing I want to talk about is police funding. So we accepted a grant, if I'm remembering this correctly, that provides either 5 or 6 new police officers. Well, next year, we don't know if students are going to be going back to school remote learning, so why are we bringing on 5 new officers when we may very well have all these resource officers that have nothing to do? I mean, I'll even go further. I don't know if you guys remember, like 3 weeks ago, there's a gentleman that told us he had a resource officer at his swimming pool. You're telling me that we need 5 more officers, but one dude is hanging out at the swimming pool all day? Isn't that a lifeguard's job? Why are we bringing on 5 more officers? It doesn't make sense. When we think about how we spend our money, we have to be aware that we don't have to fight every problem like it's a nail and just hammer away at these problems. I mean, all these people came up here and they told us that they want a society of law and order. Why do you want people to be afraid of police? Why do you want people to be afraid of a system, and that's why they don't do crime? Maybe you should actually help them so that they don't need to end up in those situations. You know, if you were to take all the money that you use to fund the police and you were to give it to people who have like perpetrated crimes, I guarantee you that they would be less likely to perpetrate crime again than they are when they go to jail. You know, we know that we have a prison problem in this country. We know we have a prison problem in Nebraska. If our police are doing such a good job of fighting crime, then why is our prison system becoming overwhelmed? You know, if they're doing such a good job of fighting crime, why do we need 4 more, 5 more, 6 more police officers? These issues are just so easy to look at broadly and not actually take the time to pick them apart and think about where these ideas come from. And I'm trying to do a better job myself of finding ways to communicate these things to people, because I do understand I can be hot-headed, I can get frustrated, you know, sometimes I just shut people's conversations out of my head because it feels like a waste of time and energy, but we all need to do a better job of this. We need to actually listen to these issues. If you really want to change your mind, or if you really want to prove to yourself that what you believe in is the truth, the best way to prove yourself right is to try and prove yourself wrong as hard as you can. And if you fail, then you know you're right. But if you're not willing to make that leap, if you're not willing to actually try and prove yourself wrong, then you're afraid that you are wrong. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Emily Nguyen. On deck, Mary Hilton.
Hello, I have a very brief comment. We've all been watching the news, and I think we can all agree that what's happening in Portland is a case of authoritarianism. And I think what happened over the weekend in Omaha, where over 100 people were rounded up and mistreated, was a case of authoritarianism. And I think that you all have the ability to prevent authoritarianism from coming to Lincoln, and I would ask you all to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Hilton.
Good evening, council members. I am Mary Hilton. So for several weeks, I've been coming and listening to the open mic section of your council meetings, and there's been at times literal, like outside the city hall today, drumbeat, and what hyperbole of that drumbeat about police being the problem in our community and not criminals. And I just think that that is an absurd notion. We know that men aren't angels, and by nature we're lawbreakers. I teach my children that if you don't self-govern, you're going to have someone governing over you. We happen to live not far from the state penitentiary, and I tell them, and if you carry on with not governing well yourself and learn the lessons that you need to at home, then somebody, when you leave our home, will govern over you, and you may end up in the penitentiary. And so I think that probably the problem that we have going on is that maybe the defund crowd just doesn't really believe in evil. And but evil is a reality in our community. We've seen that with all of the shootings we've had just in the last week and this month. And that is why we need our police and law and order as a check. So there's a healthy fear of authority, not authoritarianism, but of authority. And our law enforcement are part of that. That authority is a deterrent. So just take speeding, for example. When I drive my minivan around town, I try not to speed. I want to protect myself and those around me to be safe. But there's also this check in the back of my mind that says, I don't want to get a fine, I don't want a ticket, and I don't want to spend 9 hours taking a stop class. It's a deterrent. If I go through a red light a little late, it's that part of me that looks around and says, oh, did a police officer see me? Because, see, I know that I've done the wrong thing. So the law and law enforcement is a deterrent. If I'm not speeding, then I have no fear of law enforcement. When I am keeping the law and governing myself, I have no need of the law to be heavy-handed against me, and it's not going to be. Our LPD doesn't act like that. They want what's best. They're simply there to provide protection and safety to our citizens. But if the law of our traffic were never enforced, that would lead to chaos. Driving would become, over time, treacherous in our community because people could know they could drive and act however they wanted to, and the law would never bear down on them, and there would not be law and order, and that would lead to chaos. It would be treacherous. And so that is with any other law. When laws are not enforced, when law and order is not upheld, chaos does rule. Public safety is an essential function of this political body. Our police department is a component of that public safety, and their job is to protect people and property. And I back the blue, and I know that I represent a vast majority of citizens with a drumbeat.
1 minute.
That's that believes that in law and order, that laws must be upheld or chaos and destruction results. And I think this is just a common sense issue. And it is unfathomable, honestly, to imagine our community without law enforcement. When I need the police, I want to be able to pick up the phone and call them and know they're going to be there. And I know all of you do too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Jesse Gray. If there's anyone else left in the hall or in the chambers that'd like to testify, please step to the back of the chambers.
Hi, my name is Jessie Gray, and I'm here to speak against the decision to increase the police budget, the amount of officers, as well as the salaries of police in our city. We have all seen the millions of protesters across this country calling for the defunding of police. For you to make the decision to give LPD more money, more power, and more opportunity to harass and harm marginalized folks, you are choosing the opposite side of this moment in history. We are calling for the defunding of LPD and the reallocation of those funds into services that will actually benefit the community. That's all I have to say. I just wanted to add my name to the discourse. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jesse.
Is there anyone else left in the chambers that would like to testify on open mic? Please step forward.
I got one quick question. We're pushing up on 2 hours. Do we want to take a break or do we want to move forward? Okay. We're going to take a short break and then we'll get to the online open mic people that have signed up previously. So we'll take a 5-minute break.
a great goal.
Call the meeting of Lincoln City Council. Call the meeting of the Lincoln City Council for July 27, 2020, back in session. Sonny, would you
Okay.
like to keep calling names?
Yes, we'll go ahead and start with the testifiers on our webinar. First up is Stephanie Waite. On deck is David McWilliams. Stephanie?
Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I'm grateful to be here and have this opportunity. I grew up in a small town in Nebraska, and we moved to Lincoln a while back. I've been here about 10 years. We've enjoyed, as our family has grown, to graduate from the high schools here and to feel safe here in Lincoln, and I've appreciated that. I'm here to testify today of the importance of that, how that makes Lincoln, Lincoln. I don't think it would be the same if I couldn't walk outside and take my family on walks and go on bike rides and enjoy the beautiful trails that we have. We enjoy a lot of things here in Lincoln, and I appreciate the safety that we have. I would not want to lessen that by defunding the police department. In fact, we could use more police officers than we have now and what we're getting. Just about a month ago, in our neighborhood, a mostly peaceful protest happened. Another term might be a partially violent mob came through our neighborhood, and at the time we thought it was great. We wanted to support everyone and their protests. We were okay with that. But later on that evening, some came back apparently and decided to carve BLM in one of our vehicles. And then another car, they scratched a Roman numeral 9. And we were supportive of them, but not supportive of violence. And it broke my heart to know that people, hopefully they weren't regular citizens of Lincoln, would do that to us. Because I don't know George Floyd, and I didn't oppose, I don't condone anything that happened to him. That was wrong, and I think everyone knows that that was wrong. But it wasn't our Lincoln City Police Department that did that. And they're a great police system. I'm grateful to have them. I stand with Mary Hilton and the things that she said tonight about how it's about criminals. It's not about defunding the police. It's about protecting the safety that we have here in Lincoln. I back the blue. I'm sad that we have to look at each other in terms of the color of our skin. I don't do that. I don't look at a person and judge them for what color they are or what nationality they are. I have lots of friends that are black and that are Mexican or Asian, and I treat them the same and I love them the same. And I think I stand for most people here in Lincoln that that's how they feel too. They look at each other as Americans and as citizens. And the last thing we want is to have our Lincoln turn out to be like Portland or Seattle. That's not Lincoln. Those are not the folks that we have here. We have good citizens in Nebraska and a great Husker nation. And I would love to have the same safety that we've had in the past to continue. So please, I'm so thankful that the City Council voted to have those additional officers and grants available. And I'm grateful that we have the safety that we have, and hopefully we can still have that in the future. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Next up, David McWilliams. On deck, Kara Hunt. David? Are you there, David? Are you present,
Hello,
David?
can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, my name's Dave McWilliams. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to address the City Council. I really wanted to let you know that I support our local police department, and I've traveled all over the world and seen a lot of police departments overseas and have a lot to compare to what's going on in our country right now. And the thing I'd like to really bring forward is that who you're going to be able to call when something happens. If you defund the police and there's nobody there, I have a relative that lives in the chop zone in Seattle, and they were trying to get a hold of the police to or responders to try to get a hold of somebody when the young guy got shot there and was bleeding to death, and the local people wouldn't let the responders in, and they ended up calling the police to come in. And so we really can't have it both ways. You know, I can't say enough, like, who you're going to call. And you know, the way I see it, the police really are supposed to be peace officers, and a lot of times when there's a altercation or an escalation in my life, you know, when the police ask me to do something, I don't resist, I don't talk back. And a lot of times what I see when there's escalation is that it's being escalated by one person or other, and the police officers responding to the escalation. And you know, I look at it like it's a peacekeeper. And so I don't mean to belabor all this, and I really just want to say that I support the police, and I never talked before. I'd like to think that maybe I'm the silent majority. I'm not a big Zoom user, so I don't know if this is working right or anything like that. But I do want to say that, you know, I appreciate everything the police do for us. I appreciate they keep us safe. It makes me sick to see property damage that happened downtown, that people go and clean it up. I think there's better ways to address grievances than through violence, and I wish that people would not escalate to the point of property damage and violence. So I guess I've had my say, and I appreciate the time that you've given me.
Thank you.
Next is Kara Hunt. On deck is Kelby O'Mara.
Hi, this is Kara Hunt, and I just wanted to say that I am speaking on behalf of LPD, and I do support them. The reason I support them is not a feeling or something that is arbitrary, but we have a great police department in our city. We are not NYPD. We're not even OPD. And I think that's important to understand and delineate here. And here's a couple of facts about our police department. Right now, the national average for police officers is 18.7 officers per 10,000. In Lincoln, it's 11.6 officers per 10,000 citizens. And I think that's important to see. We're not bloated by any means. We're working within our means. I think it's also important to look at some different facts as well. So, number of suspects resisting arrest between 2017 and 2019 were a total of 893. The number of assaults on LPD officers between 2017 and 2019, 140. Suspects shot and killed by LPD officers between the years of 2017 and 2019, 0. That's a testament to our officers. I also want to just point out that we need to be thinking about, yes, it's nice to have, if you were going to have better parks and more funds for libraries, but who are you going to call when a sex trafficker comes into the library and takes your child, or takes your child from the park? I mean, these are things that are happening and are factual and statistical, and we need to be thinking about that. Who are you going to call when there's a child that's endangered? Who are we going to call? Are we just going to let that child be violated? I think these are things that, again, we need to be thinking about before we start asking questions about defunding police. So I just wanted to put that out there for thought, and I thank the City Council for their time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Kelby O'Mara. On deck, Walden Conk. Kelby O'Mara, if you're present, can you please raise your hand? Okay, next is Walden Conk. If you're available, please raise your hand. Walden? Next up is Tom Nebelsick. If you're available, please raise your hand. Tom?
I was going to raise my hand, but it went away.
Thank you. Go ahead, Tom.
Hi, Tom Nebelsick. First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak in this manner via this webinar. That's really a nice option. A couple of weeks ago, or a couple meetings ago, Councilperson Raybold had commentary regarding the sign war that was going on at the time. And I would like to make a suggestion that not against people bringing signs, but if they would only display them while they are speaking, that would be far more respectful of the person who is actually speaking at the time, and the viewers having to look at the other person's sign while the other person is speaking. My position is 100% in favor of accepting the grant that the mayor agreed to over a year ago, as I understand it, and adding the additional police officers. I don't think hasn't escaped my notice that the violence nationwide is on the increase. Omaha, Lincoln, we're all seeing an increased level of protesting, sometimes peaceful, sometimes not. Why you would not want to deal with that in a law and order fashion is beyond me. And then finally, this is kind of going to be a question for the council. My understanding was that the mayor had accepted this grant over a year ago, and that it was going to go forward and the police officers were going to be added. Since then, I've heard rumors that she's going to renege on that acceptance of that grant, and I'd like to know if any of you can offer a clarity on that issue.
Can I respond? Tom, this is not a format where we answer questions. We hear testimony and ask you questions, but you can get back with one of us can get back with you outside this council meeting. Okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you, and I appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you, Tom.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I realize that we don't typically have a conversation during this time period, but since there was a direct question and the question actually laid out something which is not true, I would like to speak the truth.
Sure.
The grant was applied for a year ago. The grant was just offered within the last month. The grant was accepted.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker.
Next speaker is Nadine Nebelsick. On deck is Tom Nesbitt. Okay. Tom Nesbitt.
Hello, this is Tom Nesbitt. We need the police. The police are the first responders to a broad range of public safety issues and serious crime. Crime will not end if we abolish defunding the police or reappropriating the funds. If the police are defunded, there's going to be a very large delayed response when people who are in need of calling 911. Fewer police on the street in neighborhoods and communities, and lack of police capacity to respond to serious crimes, that presents significant threats to the public safety of the city of Lincoln. If we defund the police, those most affected will be the poor and the marginalized. Poor neighborhoods will have to fend for themselves, even more than they already have to. Delays in police response and lack of police capacity will increase fear of crime, render victims of crime helpless, and wreak havoc on communities, especially the communities of color, even more so than is already the case. Are we there yet? No, there's no way we're there yet, but we all need to offer, and we owe Mr. Floyd's family and every Black American and person of color who has to fear the police an apology, and a promise that law enforcement is going to do everything we can, not only in Lincoln, but across America, that we can change these things. Policing that is inclusive of the community, crisis intervention and de-escalation training in all police agencies is very important. And we need to ensure that this same training is in the academies as well. Well, talking to the council, you know the budgets real well, and you know that the police budget over 85% of its personnel costs, and that doesn't leave a whole heck of a lot to buy equipment and other things that are needed. If you defund or reallocate, it's reduction in officers, plain and simple. We need to address the insanity on display with this proposal. If we defund the police in Lincoln, we're going to wind up with less police officers. And if you think things look bad now out on the streets, just wait until you see what's going to happen. You haven't seen anything. The only reason you are able to live and function in a free society is because that society has built-in protections against those who would prey on the weak and the helpless. So-called reform efforts in a number of cities across America have probably failed for the most part because the entire concept is built
Mr. Nesbitt, you're cutting out. Mr. Nesbitt, are you still there? Mr. Nesbitt?
If he wants to speak and have 1 minute left, call him at the end.
Mr. Nesbitt, if you're still there, I'll call you at the end. You have 1 minute left on your testimony. We're going to move on. We have Robert Stewart. Robert? Robert?
Hello?
Is this Robert?
This is Robert.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Hello, everyone. It feels like a vacation to be talking to you before the witching hour. Thank you again for the time and energy. Thank you for allowing the online comments to continue. I hope that continues on, and thank you to Sony and everyone behind the scenes that is making this work for the people who are trying to speak. I'm not quite as prepared as I was last week, kind of snuck up on me, but there were a few things that I wanted to address. Kind of directly to some of the comments that have been made before by the cops are God crowd. Stephanie's idea that we are not the OPD in Lincoln, but we are right down the road. Like, it is ridiculous to say that a policing system less than an hour away is going to be any substantial difference. And to address like statistics about, oh, there was so little cop this, not any cop that. Well, think how little and how not there would be if we didn't have cops. Wouldn't the statistics really drop then? And, you know, there are people that I know from Lincoln that were arrested in Omaha. So there's not as much separation as everyone seems to think there is. To Mary Hilton, like, you were here last week talking about what a great peaceful city Lincoln is, and now you're telling us about how you discipline your kids by putting the fear of the penitentiary into them. I don't, like, one seems to cancel out the other when it comes to that argument. And to Kara, I would say, please stop leaving your children unattended in parks and libraries so they are not taken so frequently. And to Mary, when I drive my minivan around, I also go the speed limit. That is for the safety of other human beings. That is not because the laws are choking me to the point where I feel like, again, so full of fear that I have to obey them. Like, is that what you're going to do if we defund the police? You're just going to, like, go 70 miles an hour all over town? I don't. These arguments, they're so based in fear. They're so much in favor of the rules. And this is kind of the main thing. They're in favor of the status quo, which there is so much information on the surface of the internet right now about how to defund the police, what it would look like to defund the police, how we would have a world without police, and what a beautiful world that would be. we all know the police are here not to protect humans, but to protect property. They are here to enforce the status quo. But the world is not made up of the status quo. The world is made up of human beings. We are constantly changing. We are constantly learning. We are constantly inviting new people and ideas into our lives. And the police are a negative force against that. They impede our progress as a society and as a community. We do not need them to protect us. We can protect ourselves. We possess within us the ability to be empathetic and loving towards our fellow humans. And I think if we didn't have a militarized force patrolling our neighborhoods, reminding us and instilling fear all the time, maybe we could be able to tap into that and use it in a better way to make a better world. So in conclusion,
1 minute.
ACAT forever, long live Turtle Island, and Black Lives Matter. Have a good night.
Next up is Aaron Poor. On deck is Jeff Moscaritolo. Aaron?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes. I can.
Hi, and thank you all so much for once again allowing for virtual participation. We are so grateful for your work to further access to this vital public forum. Thank you so much for extending this opportunity, and we urge you to continue offering this virtual participation platform. I also want to say thank you and acknowledge that there has been some great positive movement in the budget since Mayor Leary and Gaylor Bear's budget revisions, restoring funding to libraries, parks, and sidewalks, among other things. And I want to thank you for sharing the public sentiment with the mayor on those issues. I do want to strongly urge you to please consider reducing the LPD budget and reallocating that funding to health and mental health services, universal basic income, as well as public housing and other community-led social services. You all know very well that the LPD are called to incidents that other people like mental health experts or anti-oppression social workers are better suited for. Though many of us are calling for the abolition of police and the carceral state, we understand that's a big pill for many folks to swallow, which is why we're asking for this process to begin with the defunding of police. In a world with defunded police, those dollars aren't just being removed from police budgets and then evaporating into thin air. They're going into departments, services, and organizations that can better handle situations, into people, departments, and organizations that don't have such outrageously inequitable records of service. Tonight, I also want to ask that this body work to assess the city charter or municipal code or whatever governing documents we have and identify any codes, ordinances, or resolutions that erode people's First Amendment rights to protest. We are horrified by the actions of the Omaha Police Department this weekend as they trapped, assaulted, and arrested almost 100 protesters on Saturday night. Please condemn these actions and take all necessary measures to ensure that this does not happen in Lincoln again. Please pass legislation that restores our right to protests and protects protesters as they're practicing that right. OPD also showed us another horrific example of chemical weapons used on people. We remember that less than 2 months ago as such weapons were used here on us in Lincoln. I urge you to make chemical warfare on Lincolnites through the use of pepper sprays, tear gas, and other such weapons illegal in our city governing documents. I also just want to say that the calls for law and order we've heard by white Lincolnites tonight and in previous meetings echo the calls for law and order made by Reagan and Nixon in the 60s and 70s and 80s, which were decidedly pushbacks against civil rights gains. Law and order politics were and are undeniably fueled by racism and race-based hatred. Law and order politics breathed life into policies that led to longer prison terms, mandatory sentencing, and furthered the legal expansion and normalization of the hyper-policing of Black and brown communities. Law and order ideologies are what have made the US the home to the world's largest prison population, a population, again, that is disproportionately Black and brown people. We know this crisis intimately here in Nebraska, and here too our minoritized communities are disproportionately represented in our populations of incarcerated people. Incarceration rips families apart. Incarceration disappears people that white society deems problematic. We need to invest in Black and brown Asian communities and go to the root of issues of poverty, crime, and mental illness, not disappear them into the prison industrial complex. Defending the police is unimaginative, and it is paving the way for further racist inequities to be enacted legally against our own people. So please consider all of this as you continue your work on the Lincoln City budget. Thank you once again for your work in listening to the people, sharing our voices. Black Lives Matter. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, Erin.
Next is Jeff Moscaritolo. Jeff, are you available?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for having this virtual public comment session, and thank you for hearing me. My name is Jeff Moscaritolo. I'm a white man. I'm originally from New Jersey. I've lived in Lincoln for the last 8 years or so. And I have two uncles who are police officers, or were police officers. They're retired now. So police are in my family. And yes, I do believe that there are good people out there who are police officers, but that is not really the issue here. We've heard a lot of testimony tonight from white Lincoln residents who are talking about how they support increasing funding for police because they believe that police as an organization generally preserve law and order in a quote-unquote free society and make them feel safe. And they've often referred to their own experience of how safe they feel because of police officers. One woman, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name, stated that if she's driving and she sees a police officer, on the side of the road, she'll be extra conscious to make sure she's not breaking any rules, and then she's not at all afraid that she will be detained or condescended to or violated in some other way by this police officer. We've heard a lot of these types of stories from white people. But the problem is that these anecdotes all seem to assume that we live in a world in which only those doing something wrong are stopped by police. And we of course know that that's not true. A few years ago, I want to say 2013, the ACLU of Nebraska released a study that found that that people of color, drivers of color, are significantly more likely to be stopped and searched by police than white drivers. And I just want to share, I thought I would share an anecdote of my own that can try to sort of support this a little bit. This was a few years ago. I was hanging out in Lincoln with a group of friends. We were activists. We were trying to hold some workshops and go around town doing various things. And there was a point where we got hungry and we were like, all right, let's go to El Chaparro and get some food. And we've been spending the whole day together is my point. When we got to El Chaparro, we ordered our food, and then when it came time to pay, I reached into my bag and realized that I didn't have my wallet with me, and I had to kind of, embarrassed, I had to ask my friends to spot me for the meal. And a friend who was sitting across from me, who is black, said, "You've been driving around all day without your wallet?" And I said, "Yeah, but it's fine. I probably just left it at home. I'm not too worried." And he goes, no, you've been driving around in your car all day without your wallet and you're not worried. And I said, yeah. And he said, white privilege. And I said, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. So I think that all of those stories that we're hearing from other speakers tonight saying that they feel safe because of police assumes that they are not targeted by police. I, as a person who didn't have my identification on me, wasn't worried about being pulled over by police and having this extra infraction laid upon me because I didn't have my ID. I wasn't worried about that because in my mind, I thought, well, if I hit a stop sign, I can just stop and I'll make sure that I don't get pulled over. And the reality, statistically, is that that is not the case for everyone. And so any of our arguments about what to do with police cannot simply rest on the experiences of white people with police, unfortunately. We have to rely on something more substantial than our own personal experiences as white people. Thank you so much for hearing us, and we hope that we can continue these virtual meetings in the future. Black Lives Matter.
Thank you, Jeff.
Next up is Ashley Daly. And then on deck would be Nadine Doublesec. And last would be Tom Nesbitt to finish his testimony. Ashley, are you available?
I'm right here.
Thank you.
Can you all hear me? So I am joining, thank you for having the meeting like this. I actually have something else to say that's not related to the police or the Black Lives Matter movement, which I fully support. My comment is actually about a bike crossing on Old Cheney Road. I've emailed your transportation department a couple times this week, and I haven't heard anything back from them yet. On Tuesday, July 21st, my 11-year-old son was struck by a car going 45 miles an hour while he was trying to cross the bike path, the tier. He was trying to cross Old Cheney with a friend in the bike trail. Now, we have lived in Lincoln for 11 years, and I have never seen that bike trail be repainted. I've never seen that bike trail identified for updates or repairs. And the problem is that Old Cheney is a major thoroughfare in South Lincoln. It's 4 lanes, and the drivers are reckless when they go through. So I'm asking City Council to either fast track my application to have a lighted crosswalk installed, to have the crosswalk repainted, to have something done so that another child does not need to be hit by a car because they couldn't seem to, one, slow down, but also identify where people are coming from. That crosswalk has been a major source of anxiety for my neighborhood for many years. And this is just kind of the straw that's breaking the camel's back. I'm not sure if there's something else I need to be doing. If there is, please advise. But I'd like to see the crosswalk / bike path trail crossing Old Cheney Road at about 31st Street that connects the Williamsburg and Tierra trails. I'd like that crosswalk to be better marked, and hopefully with one of those crosswalk lights similar to the one that was recently installed at Peter Pan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Nadine Nebelsek. Nadine? Nadine?
This is Nadine.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to reiterate what some other people have already said, that I would like to honor the grant that they have, the mayor's been offered, and I would like to put more policemen on our force. I stand behind the police officers. I think that some of these people that want to defund them, if they could be with the police officer for a week or two and see what really goes on with the police, I don't think they'd feel the way they feel today. So again, I'd like to support the police, and I'd like the mayor to honor the grant. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Nesbitt, are you available?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know where I got cut off for sure and what happened, but I'll just sum it up. I understand I have about a minute or so, and we need to address the insanity on display with this proposal of defunding the police. If you defund the police in Lincoln, you wind up with less police. And if you think things look bad now out on the streets, just wait until then, and they'll be unrecognizable. The only reason you're able to live and function in free society is because that society built in protections against those who prey on the weak and the helpless. The fact remains that the vast majority of men and women who sign on to become law enforcement officers, and specifically Lincoln Police Department, are dedicated citizens who care enough about keeping us safe that they are willing to do dangerous and potentially deadly jobs that don't pay all that much money. But as with any group of human beings, a bad apple is going to slip through once in a while and join the rest in the barrel. But how do you root them out? Even someone with ill intent who signs up to a police academy to get involved in police work isn't going to show up and first time interviewed say, oh boy, I can't wait to get out there and begin oppressing minorities and cash in by robbing drug dealers. That's not the case. The bottom line is this: every cop is a good cop until they stop behaving themselves. The vast majority will go on to finish their careers with no issues and admirable records of public service.
Okay.
Some will turn out to be bad actors, and they must be rooted out and held accountable in the strongest fashion possible. I don't know of any way to get the error rate down to zero when recruiting new police officers. And believe me, I've been involved with it for many years. All we can do is be vigilant as possible and weed out the bad ones quickly when we identify one.
Thank you, Tom.
I want to thank the council and the mayor for the support of adding officers. And please, seriously think before you vote for defunding the police. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you, Tom. So that completes.
That's the last of our testifiers.
Move adjournment.
Second.
It's been moved that we adjourned and
She seconded.
seconded by Councilperson Raybold. Please call the roll.
Schob.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Christensen.
Yes.
Yes. Bowers.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the